June 1967. The world expected another stalemate in the Middle East. Instead, in less than a week, maps changed, armies collapsed, and a divided city became one again. On this channel, we don't just tell stories about battles, we examine the decisions, pressures, and systems that make certain moments feel almost inevitable in hindsight, even when they seemed impossible at the time. The Six-Day War is often remembered as a lightning military victory, but this story isn't just about speed. It's about why a city that had been divided for nearly 2 decades was suddenly unified, and why that moment continues to shape global politics to this day. Because the capture of Jerusalem wasn't originally the goal. In fact, many leaders hoped it would never happen. After the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, the city of Jerusalem was split in two. West Jerusalem came under the control of Israel. East Jerusalem, including the Old City, the historic core surrounded by ancient walls, fell to Jordan. Barbed wire cut through neighborhoods. Sniper positions overlooked civilian streets. Families lived within sight of homes they could never visit again. Most importantly, Jews were barred from their holiest sites, including the Western Wall, a place of prayer for centuries. For 19 years, this division hardened into reality. Meanwhile, tensions across the region grew steadily. In Egypt, President Gamal Abdel Nasser positioned himself as the champion of Arab nationalism. He moved troops into the Sinai Peninsula. He expelled United Nations peacekeepers. He closed the Straits of Tiran, cutting off Israel's maritime access to the Red Sea. To Israeli leaders, this looked like preparation for annihilation. Neighboring states, including Syria, signed mutual defense agreements. Radio broadcasts spoke openly about destroying Israel. Inside Israel, the atmosphere shifted from anxiety to quiet urgency. Mobilization began. Reservists left factories, farms, and universities. Schools prepared shelters. Hospitals cleared beds. No one knew if the country would survive the coming war. On the morning of June 5, 1967, Israel struck first. Its air force launched a carefully planned surprise attack that destroyed much of Egypt's aircraft on the ground within hours. Their superiority, the foundation of modern warfare, was suddenly gone for the Arab coalition. But Jerusalem was not the main target. Israel's leadership, including Prime Minister Levi Eshkol and Defense Minister Moshe Dayan, initially hoped to keep Jordan out of the conflict entirely. Messages were sent through diplomatic channels. If Jordan stayed out, Israel would not attack. For a brief moment, the city's division might have remained unchanged. Then artillery fire began. Jordanian forces shelled West Jerusalem and central Israel, acting under the belief, reinforced by inaccurate Egyptian reports, that Arab armies were already winning elsewhere. The conflict widened instantly. What had been a regional crisis became a direct fight over the city itself. Urban warfare in Jerusalem posed unique risks. The Old City was dense, ancient, and sacred to 3 major religions. Heavy bombardment could destroy sites of immeasurable historical and spiritual value. Israeli commanders faced a dilemma: move slowly and risk prolonged casualties, or move quickly and risk irreversible damage. Paratrooper units were assigned to the mission, elite soldiers trained for difficult operations, but not for fighting in labyrinthian stone streets filled with civilians and holy landmarks. Every decision carried consequences beyond the battlefield. International pressure mounted. Foreign governments warned against harming religious sites. The world watched closely. Within Israel itself, emotions ran high. For many soldiers, this was not just strategic terrain, it was a place woven into cultural memory. Yet discipline remained strict. To orders emphasized control, coordination, and restraint. Impulsive heroics could ignite a wider catastrophe. On June 7th, Israeli paratroopers advanced through the Lion's Gate into the Old City. Resistance was scattered but real. Sniper fire echoed through narrow streets. Soldiers moved carefully, clearing buildings one by one. Then came the moment that would define the war. Israeli forces reached the Temple Mount, a plateau sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike. Shortly afterward, they descended toward the Western Wall Plaza. For the first time since 1948, Jewish soldiers stood before the ancient stones. Radio transmissions captured the quiet shock of the moment. Commanders spoke in restrained tones, as if aware that history itself was listening. Jerusalem, divided for nearly 2 decades, was now under a single authority. Yet the victory was not purely emotional. It was also strategic. Control of the city removed a vulnerable front line that had cut through civilian neighborhoods. It secured key high ground. It altered the balance of power in the region overnight. By the end of 6 days, Israel had captured not only East Jerusalem but also the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. The scale of change was staggering. The reunification of Jerusalem reshaped politics far beyond the battlefield. For Israelis, it became a symbol of survival against overwhelming odds, proof that decisive planning and rapid execution could overcome numerical disadvantage. For Palestinians and the broader Arab world, it marked the beginning of a new and painful chapter, defined by displacement, occupation, and unresolved national aspirations. Diplomatically, the consequences were immediate. United Nations debates intensified. Global alliances shifted. Peace negotiations would revolve around these territorial changes for decades. Religious tensions also deepened. Control of sites sacred to multiple faiths required delicate arrangements to prevent further conflict. Administrative authority over the Temple Mount complex remained with Islamic custodians, even under Israeli security control, a compromise designed to avoid igniting a broader religious war. But compromises do not erase symbolism. Jerusalem became not just a city, but a focal point of identity, sovereignty, and memory. Every future negotiation would return to it. Every flare-up of violence would echo through its streets. What happened in June 1967 did not resolve the conflict. It transformed it. The Six-Day War demonstrated how quickly history can pivot when preparation meets opportunity and when leaders choose action over hesitation. Jerusalem's reunification was not the product of a single heroic charge. It was the result of intelligence, logistics, discipline, and a cascade of decisions made under extreme pressure. A city once divided by barbed wire became a symbol claimed by multiple peoples, multiple faiths, and competing visions of the future. And more than half a century later, its status remains one of the most sensitive issues in global politics. Because some victories end wars, others simply begin a new phase of them. If there's another historical moment you'd like explored in this calm, documentary style, let us know in the comments. And if you appreciate thoughtful, in-depth history without sensationalism, consider subscribing and supporting the channel. History is not just about what happened, it's about understanding why it could not have happened any other way.